My name's Kazonis and I was born in 1952 in Brisbane and grew up in Skinner Street, West End, and have lived in West End almost all my life except for 4 years. West End being predominantly a Greek area, that's where my parents had migrated to because of that reason. Going to West End State School, there were quite a number of young Greek children from the locality that were there, and many of those are still my very good friends. So the bond that was formed going through at West End State School is something that I haven't forgotten. In fact, I can go through school photos and remember most of the kids in each of the grades going through that primary school. My parents could not speak a lot of English, and I was ably assisted by an old lady next door, Mrs. Thomas, who was my adopted grandmother at that time, living next door, and she taught me a lot about the English language. At home at that stage in Skinner Street, I had my grandfather living there together with my father and mother, and I had 3 other siblings, 3 sisters at that time. I have 3 siblings and their names are Maria, Andrea and Evie. My grandparents, my grandfather was George Kazonis, and he came to Australia from Monolithos Rhodes in 1927. My father, Emmanuel Kazonis, was born in Katabia Rhodes and came to Australia in the late 1930s, whilst Mum Tirandafilya Kazonis had come to Australia in 1950. In 1951, my parents married, and I was born in 1952. My memories of those early days, I remember my grandfather always going up to the shop and coming home with a big garpuzi, which would generally cut and bloody hard into the watermelons in the summertime. He just loved his watermelon. He'd always be buying us ice creams, and of course away from food, the other remembering is playing with the other Greek kids and other kids in the streets of Skinner Street, whether we're playing cricket, football or whatever. We're always in the streets barefooted and kicking the football or playing cricket in those days. Greece roads were in occupation at that time, and the Depression, it was very, very tough, extremely tough in those years. And grandfather George came to Australia, like many of the other Greeks that come from Greece, and working in the cotton fields up at Billawila and up in the north and central Queensland, and was sending money back to the old country for the family to support the family as such. It was pretty tough in those days, and my dad came over for the same reason back then in the 30s, and he did the same. He was supporting his family back in Katabia Rhodes for quite a number of years. Mum came into the scene via a Proxinia, right, which my grandfather had organised, and she arrived in Australia in 1950. Now remember that grandfather left in 1927, so she hadn't seen him for 23 years, right? So quite a big thing those days when family members were leaving the family, and they all knew back then that they might never see him again, or hopefully they would, but that was always the thought in the back of each of those minds. And Mum always tells of the sadness of the family when she left, My grandfather and my parents knew very, very little English, in fact, very, very little English, but had to adapt. And whilst a lot of times they worked with other Greeks in certain industries, they'd be talking Greek and trying to pick up the English language from a few of the others. Now, I don't recall my grandfather speaking very much English, right? But Dad did. He picked up the English. He actually served in the Australian Army for 4 years, and was in outback Queensland there, and throughout Queensland. So basically he picked up the English language, and also when he bought into a convenience business, well, they had to be speaking, learn the language to get by. It was tough for Mum when she arrived, very tough, but slowly but surely she was pretty determined, and she was very determined, in fact, and with the help of Mrs. Thomas that was living next door to us in Skinner Street, she understood more than what she would speak. So I used to dream of playing sport. I used to love sport, as we all did at the school there, and at that stage at West End State School we used to play rugby league on a Friday, and couldn't wait till Friday to come. We'd dream about scoring tries and sort of tackling and winning games. It was just sort of, and at one stage, I think it was in grade 4 or 5, our school teacher was the coach, Manuel Alexian, a well-known Greek, and it was quite interesting with Manuel being a teacher at the school. I played rugby league at West End State School. When we went to Brisbane State High, they played rugby union, so there was no league in State High. So we all played rugby union for a number of years. There was, when I was in junior or sub-senior, grade 11, I was playing union for Brisbane State High, and very often be playing rugby league in the afternoon for Goya, the Greek Orthodox Youth of Australia, which we had a club here in Browning Street, West End. And that was, from there I did play in South's Rugby League down at Davies Park, and I did also spend a year playing the A grade up at Ipswich competition. And from then onwards I was playing a game with Goya Rugby League, coach Goya Rugby League, and went on to play touch football with Goya. Goya, being the Greek Orthodox Youth of Australia, was born in the mid to late 1960s. It basically took over another Hellenic organisation, and they sort of merged to become the new Goya. The Greek Orthodox community of St George were good enough to give us the home, the property in Russell Street, Browning Street, that backed onto the Cafaneo in Russell Street. And we used that as a meeting place, clubhouse. Goya was one of something that's in your mind, like I've never forgotten Goya. Goya's been an integral part of the Greek community of Brisbane, and I'll say Brisbane, not just St George, but South Side and North Side as well. It brought together, as you're aware, a lot of the young Greeks, and particularly the females, weren't allowed to go out in those days. Life was pretty strict with particularly the females and the males to a certain degree, but a lot of them were allowed to go to the events that were run by Goya under the supervision of Father Gregory and some other elders within the club. It was a religious organisation, however, it was also a very much get-together functions of barbecues and going out on we'd have bus trips and car rallies and a whole series of events, dances. We used to have some of the best Greek dancers in Brisbane back in those days, and it was really a joy to be part of that club. I joined the committee there in 1970, and I was on that committee for probably, I think, at least 12, 14 years. I did serve president for 2 terms within the club there, and it was a very fulfilling experience. It was just something you treasure, because the friends that we developed, and I can tell you, most of my friends that I have today come through Goya and remain very good friends. Goya also was the catalyst of many marriages. There was so many people that come together. I met my wife through Goya, right? Many, I would say there's probably 20 different groups of people that I know that are friends of mine that all met through Goya, through the Greek functions, through the dances, through the sport, through whatever. We catered women playing basketball as well. There was a soccer team there as well. We had cricket teams at Goya. We had rugby league teams at Goya. So it was not just, it wasn't just a sporting club, but it felt like it sometimes. But the interaction between all the members of the club was just such, it was wonderful. There was hardly ever a disagreement or a blue. And it was just great growing up. Now, one of the things I will tell you is that Goya also was the catalyst where the Greek community of St. George is today. Because through Goya, we've had people like Stathias Stathis, myself, Spiro Konyas, Manuel Kalinikos, Georgia Marandos, Jim Giorgio, and all of them that have come through, Michael Anastas to a lesser degree, but that have come through in the last 30 years as leaders within the Greek community. We're all members of Goya, all come through up that. And what Goya had instilled in most of us is that Greekness, our heritage, our language, a passion for our Hellenic heritage. It was just very difficult to describe, you know, the passion, and that's why a lot of all that generation go back to Greece as often as they can. We love going back to Greece, and yeah, I'm exceptionally passionate about when we go to Greece. Wherever we go, if we go overseas, we always end up back in Greece. And always back at Rhodes and back at the villages. Mum's still got a house up at Monolithos that the family uses and friends use when they go over there. My cousins over there look after the place. I love going back because I've got a lot of first cousins and second cousins over in Rhodes in particular. And they are just so warm and hospitable. You wouldn't wish for better family members. They just can't do enough for you. We just love it. It's just so close to them. We go out, we have a great time when we're there. And look, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you how many times we've been back, probably 15 times, right? First time back in 1990 and the last time in 2018, where the wife and I, we took our children and their wives and their grandchildren. So there's 10 of us that travelled, and we had just the best time, and the kids just absolutely loved Rhodes in Greece, and they forever talk about Greece. They forever, in their memories, Mum's Yaya's house up there in Monolithos, and the swimming and all the activities that they had, and meeting all their relatives over there was just unbelievable. It was just such an experience that they still talk about it today. Meeting my wife was through Goya, and it was a really interesting scenario. I used to see her at the Goya functions, and she was cousins to one of my best mates was Jimmy Gayton, who lived in Corbett Street, and she was first cousins to Jim. And this particular night at Goya football at New Farm Park, Stathias Stathis, who was heavily involved with the club, had actually come across us as who's going to the Goya ball. And I think there was probably a handful, probably 2-3 people who were going, and the rest weren't going. And he bore up us, he gave us a serve, why aren't you going, and blah, blah, blah. And this is all these girls that would like to go, and you blokes are carrying on not wanting to go. And then someone made the comment, well, who are the females that want to go? And then, sure enough, Stathi had this list of females that had the next week's training. And we all had a look at it. And I said, oh shit, you know. I said to Jim, listen, why don't you ring your cousin up with you and see if she's already going to the ball. Anyway, after football training on a Monday and Wednesday night, we used to meet down at the West End corner. Actually, where Andrew Angelo's optometrist is at the moment, it used to be a milk bar. And we used to pull up there every Monday and Wednesday night after training, have a drink. And anyway, Jimmy Gayton proceeded to go to the telephone, and he ringed his cousin up and then threw me under the bus virtually, So next thing I was on the phone talking to Kelly. My wife's name was Carolyn by the name. Carolyn Shalakis was her name pre-getting married, and her name, she was called Kelly, right, as she grew up. So next thing I know, I'm on the phone talking to Kelly on the phone, like a, just then always, I was never short of words, but I was that particular time. And I said to her, would you like to go to the ball? And she said, yes, right? And that's where it all flowed on from. Went to the Goyan ball, then we went out quite a number of times after that. And then of course, her parents wanted to know, well, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. You're gonna get married? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. My father, then we decided to get married. And so I remember telling Dad, this and this and that. He said, all right. I said, the engagement was in March. It just happened to be on my birthday in March. And then he says, all right, to both of you, said, well, when are you getting married? He says, is June okay? That was 3 months after. I says, come off the grass. I says, maybe 12 months. Dear enough, after 12 months, he says, right? And we finally negotiated 6 months. So we got married in September of the same year in 1973. So from 1973, you can see it's been 49 years that we've been married. We've got 2 terrific children, 2 good a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law, and 4 beautiful grandchildren, which we're extremely proud of. My son Emmanuel married Naomi, and my daughter Melissa married Simon Xanthopoulos. And the grandchildren, there's Alexis was the eldest one, followed by Christos. Then Melissa had twins, and one was Timmy, and the other was Kalia. I got married in 1973 in the Greek Orthodox Church here at St. George, and at that time Father Gregory was the only priest that was there. I had a good relationship with Father Gregory at that time there because through Goya, and he actually officiated at our wedding, which was, the reception was held at the Colossus Hall, which was the main hall because the Greek club wasn't completed back those days. And so it was a wedding there. We had about 300 people at the wedding, as was traditional, maybe more. And it was a great night. It went on from there. And what had actually happened, I was actually working at Paul's Ice Cream and Milk down the bottom. I was in a position of, as an associate to the manager of the milk factory there. Anyway, while working there, Dad and my Uncle Tom had a convenience store at Kelvin Grove Road on the corner of Ithaca Street. And they had decided to retire, and they sold the business in about February to an English couple. Come June, July, the guy started to close the shop at 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon and be heading over to the Normby Hotel. And before we knew it, the shop had gone backwards big time, and he wanted out. In conversation with Dad and my uncle, I said to him that I'd be prepared to take the shop over. I used to work every Sunday and the public holidays. Dad and my uncle used to alternate the Sundays, and I used to work every Sunday, one with Dad and one with my Uncle Tom. And the public holidays used to work, whoever was on used to work there as well. And that went on for, right through the 60s for quite a number of years, right? So I had a bit of experience and knew a lot about the business at that stage. And they spoke to my wife about it to me, and I said, look, about this taking over the shop. So we got married on the 23rd of September. We actually spent a 9-day honeymoon, went up to North Queensland and come back and went straight into the shop. And we run the shop until 1981, right? And which was a very good time. It was a good business to us. We managed to buy our first home through the little business there. But as what happened with a lot of convenience stores and changes to traffic regulations and parking, and the shop became a bit of a problem for people to pull up, and we decided to sell the business and the freehold. And whilst I was there, I I grew up next door to Stan Dracos in Skinner Street, and obviously all the kids were good friends, were mates. And what happened was that I rang, and George Pipos answered the phone. And George Pipos at that time was also president of the Greek Orthodox community of St George, and they shared an office, which was the old Suncorp building down there on the corner of Russell and Boundary Street. And George says to me, he says, "Come over," he says, that's George's abrupt nature, "come over, we'll have a chat," right? And I get over there, and he said, we had a bit of a chat. He says Stan was not 100% health-wise. And when can you start? I said, "Mate, I've got a shop to get rid of. I just can't start." He says, anyway, I used to go to the markets and open the shop at 5:30 in the morning, go to the markets, Brisbane markets, fruit markets, and get the fruit and vegetables and what was required. And then by 9 o'clock, 9:30, I'd change and go to the maybe 10 o'clock and go to the shop. Cal would work the shop with my father. My father would help out there, right? I'd get back at 2 o'clock, and then I got later at 3 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock, and it just got a bit of a drain on family. So we got rid of the business, and I bought into the business. Worked with Stan, bought into the business with Johnny Kazonis, and we had that business together to about 1985, when John married and decided to pursue another life change. He went into another field selling cars, whatever. I bought the business out, and then shortly afterwards, we were having problems with the landlord with getting a lease and what have you, and we moved progressively forward and made an offer and bought the property that we're currently in here at 69 Russell Street, West End. So we've been in this building since 1985, which is a long time. Been in real estate now for 40 years, which has been a very, very satisfying occupation. Never in my dreams did I think of back in the teens what I would be doing. In fact, when I did leave school, I finished senior at Brisbane State High School. It was probably one of the saddest days of my life, actually. Leaving school, leaving all the mates, not knowing whether you'll see them. I didn't even have a clue what I wanted to do. That's the real fact. I did a course at some subjects over at the QT and the accounting side of things. It wasn't exactly my cup of tea. Whilst I got through, I wasn't comfortable. To the horror of my parents, that I didn't proceed on with it. But then I went on to do a real estate course, right? After the shop, I did the real estate course. Then I did a valuation course. So effectively, I did 6 years study, right, in the 80s, right, which gave me my license as a real estate agent and auctioneer, and then furthermore gave me the valuation certificate to doing proper valuations for banking institutions and whatever else was required. So that's been a very rewarding and a real something that I enjoy, because you meet so many people. It's embarrassing today, the number of people that will say, "G'day, Chris," and you know the face and you can't remember their names, right? It's just one of those, because you've dealt with so many people over the years. Growing up during school, primary school, we didn't really suffer a great deal of racism at the primary school. There's more at the high school side of things, where things were a little bit woggy and that type of stuff there that we experienced. I think going back, some of the older Greeks copped more than what we did. Our answer to a lot of them was, "Well, we know where we come from. Do you know where you come from?" Basically insinuating, well, you've come across as your ancestors as convicts, basically was a way of getting back to them at that stage. But as we went on in life through school, we didn't suffer a great deal at all, but it was definitely there. And with the influx of Asians or Chinese, they seem to cop it a bit more in later times, and they sort of laid off the Greek and Italian and the Mediterranean people at later times. It was just something that was there for a period of time, but I was fortunate probably because being a fair-headed and not a dark-skinned, dark-haired sort of truly looking wog, as they would say, you know. So I didn't experience much of that at all. We did experience it sometimes playing football, when on the football field, when some of the things they'd get a bit fiery, for whatever reason, and you get someone on the other side, oh, you bloody wogs, or whatever the case may be. Chris Egglesos fixed them up once in one of the games. He's a good player, tough player, and one of the games he had eaten a clove of garlic, right, and had actually packed into the scrum there, and of course he breathed together on their key, you know, and stunk of garlic, and all of a sudden they're packing into a scrum there, and it just erupted. You bloody wogs, and boom, bang, boom, punch it going. He did it deliberately, just upset the other side, but he used to eat the garlic, like, you know, and things like that. And but you know, that was on the football field. Off the football field, it was a different scenario. We as a Greek community embrace multiculturalism, and there's been a huge acceptance of multiculturalism in the area in Australia these days. With the sporting field is different to outside, you know, to the community itself. It's hard to explain to you, but I think we're in a much better position today than what we ever were when it comes to racism. With the Europeans are pretty well considered local. Some of the Asians, I mean, there's still the indigenous still copper hiding at different times, unfairly I think at times, but that's just the way things are. It's getting better. But within the community, we've always not discriminated against anybody. Especially like my involvement in the community was from 1988, you know, when I first came out of the committee there, and then in '89 I was vice president for 4 years with Spiro Conyas. So 1993 to 2001 I was president for 8 years. So, and since then I've been on the committee since then. At the same time I had an involvement with the Olympic, right, where again that was regarded as the Greek club, like the Greek sporting club, predominantly Wogs. They copped that in the early days as well. But again, now it doesn't happen whatsoever that I see. At Panayiri, which we've taken Panayiri from a Greek picnic afternoon in the park to a full day Panayiri to a 2-day festival in the park. Now, we embrace multiculturalism in a big way, and the government really look up to us. Like we were voted one of the 150 iconic events in Queensland back in 2009 when Queensland was celebrating 150 years. We, over the years since then, we've had an involvement with the Chinese community because of the Olympic Games and because of the Greek Olympics of 1896 and that type of thing. And then in 2009 we had a multicultural event with the Indigenous, where we had our Greek music and dancers, bouzouki, playing with the didgeridoo and the Indigenous dancers. So we had this showpiece on the park at Musgrave Park with all the state government, city councils, federal government, all there, and they actually went wild about it. It was just a spectacular event. We had two of the oldest cultures in the world performing together. Bouzouki on one side, didgeridoo at the other side, Hellenic dancers dancing around, and the Indigenous dancing. It was an event that no one would forget.
Just a few days after being moved on from Musgrave Park in Brisbane, the Indigenous community has played a large role in the official opening of the Panegyri Greek Festival. The traditional owners say the two groups have a long association and they want that to continue. The welcome to country was warmly received by the thousands of people enjoying Panegyri.
And we've done it once before and we will be doing it again this year. It's just something of showing respect to the, as we say, the elders of the lands, I suppose. But having said that, that's how far the Greek community has sort of progressed forward from the early days. The Olympic Soccer Club, they were in danger of maybe losing the fields back in the mid-90s. And whilst at the time I was president at the time, I had a few people, including John Polly and a couple others, concerned about the future of the club and all that type of stuff. And we moved progressively ahead and managed to get the lease of the grounds under the auspices of the Greek Orthodox Community of St George to protect the club, to protect the playing, so that no one could come in and make a move and take over the Olympic Soccer Club. We wanted to keep that as a sporting venue for under the Greek auspices of the Greek Orthodox Community of St George, and we've been fortunate to be able to get funding and putting money into the place where we've developed the grounds with grandstands and new the clubhouse that was built there. And there was a lot of assistance from the Greek associations and the Coffee Club. They were really special in their contribution and their assistance there. And of course the Greek community that put the money up and applied for the loans. So that's one of the reasons why we've got such a good sporting complex there under the Greek community, and it'll be very difficult to take away from the Greek community. So that's another bow, in the for the community in that respect. With the community, I'll go back to with the community. When I got involved with the community, Mum was paranoid. She was really up, and sort of Dad had passed on, and she was sort of proud. But she made sure it was the matia su tessera, don't do anything bloody stupid, respect, you gotta respect your elders, respect the people, respect this and that. And it's always stuck in my mind, and all of the community we've had there all over the years, we are very respectful of that, of looking after our members and non-members. You just gotta look at how we progressed, got care. What was once just a Greek respite type of thing there to what we've developed being a mainstream organisation there. Mum actually spent over 10, 12, 14 years there with all the other Greek ladies that were cooking downstairs in respite. Right, they used to religiously go 2 or 3 times a week, and there'd be something on there every day, and the ladies, Mum and all the ladies would actually be cooking for the Greeks that were going there, So it's been going a long time, the respite, and something that we're exceptionally proud of. I did have a couple of people ring me up back in 1989, and I did the fellet after, not really understanding what the welfare and respite was all about, and this and that, and had to explain to them what we're doing, and to the credit, 2 of those people in particular end up coming back and using our facilities, and would never say a bad word about the thing. It's just a learning experience, how we've progressed the whole place. The help that goes through that we do to the general public, is people don't see it and don't really respect it enough. But the staff we got up there are fabulous staff, and now it's one of the major factors for the community that keeps us going, So the community's pretty well very focused on expanding. We've got the Greek school, new school plan coming ahead as well. So, we built the building on the corner here for the future of the community. It's not a matter of making money, it's having money to do what we wanted to do, to progress our services to all the members that we have. Like you take the Panayiri Festival there, the Panayiri Festival that we run, there's no outside food on the park. They're all volunteers. They're all Greek associations, sporting club, churches and all the communities that have stalls in the park. We deliberately run it that way. So that is their major fundraiser. That's their major fundraiser they have to do what they need. The Lopter Horse with the nursing home, Ladies Auxiliary with the church, and so the sporting club, Olympic with so Panayiri is more than just, we're there catering for to spread Hellenism, Greek music, Greek food to the people of South East Queensland, from Noosa to Coolangatta out to Warwick, and we've achieved that. With the ever-increasing workload that Father Gregory had within the community, it was evident that we were going to require a second priest to continue on, as Father Gregory was approaching retirement age. We were fortunate that the Archdiocese granted us and sent to Brisbane Father Dimitri, who capably assisted Father Gregory and was basically responsible for the introduction of the English liturgy services on a Saturday evening, which were hugely popular with the younger generation. And we had a trend back to the church with these people that were able to understand the liturgy in English. We also had the services later with Father Anastasios. We had Father Silouan, and in recent times Father Stavros, who have contributed greatly to the promotion and the workings of the church over the last number of years. Look, our forefathers, and I'm talking about our forefathers back in the 30s, 40s and 50s, were sharp enough and smart enough to look to the future. They had purchased some properties. The old church and Guffaneo used to be in Charlotte Street, and they had visions of progressing the community. They bought property over here at Russell Street and Edmondson Street. And when they moved from Charlotte Street and virtually sold the property, because we built the Greek church here in 1959. So that was always going to be the centre of the Greek community, was going to be here around the church. And from there they built the Greek club. There was also the Greek school that was built there, beside there. So then we progressed to build the childcare and the welfare centres there. So it's been an ongoing thing. Now we also purchased houses along Russell Street and Browning Street at the same time. And the future plan was to have the church, have the club, have a Greek school, have a sporting complex, have welfare services developed more in the 80s, and those type of services for our members. Now, in the George Pipos era, they purchased a few of the properties here as well. That was in the late 70s and 80s. And then after that, we continued it on where we bought the house on the corner, around the corner of Browning and Russell Streets. Now, the idea there was basically, we're the Guffaneo, but basically the Guffaneo was a real hub. It was really the nucleus. The Guffaneo was what got a lot of things going, because in the city, you used to have all the Greeks from the country that used to come down there, and it was a meeting place. Now, when we had the Guffaneo here at South Brisbane, it was sort of a chauvinistic male-only domain. It was like a Tattersalls club for men only. Then women started to progress when we had leased it out and what have you. And then it came a time where we had to make decisions on redevelopments to go forward. And it wasn't it wasn't that popular by getting rid of the Guffaneo, but the plan was, we had a master plan in place where we had the Guffaneo and the properties all around Tagoya House, all to the Greek community. Then we had the flats in Browning Street, and next door were the childcare and our welfare building, the Greek club, the flats next door that had been burnt down, which is a car park at the moment at the church, and the 2 blocks over the road. So when we purchased all these properties as they come available, right, for the plan, for a master plan, we were actually looking also, one of the plans initially you had was like a corridor from this part of Russell Street right through to the Greek community. right? And having a school and having all these different, like a platea, right? But it was pretty difficult to get some of the other properties through there. So we had to sort of rethink our plan, and with the vacant block of land on the corner opposite the church, then when the Dracopoulos family sold their house, we bought that to make it a parcel of over 1,100 square metres. So we had that site marked for redevelopment, possible school, or the other parts of it. So the plan was to build a school. Then with the zoning changes in the area, we were able to go 5, 6, 7 stories in some of the properties here. So the plan was then, we looked at having a new school on the site next door to the childcare. But so we got plans done and models drawn, and which included building on the corner of the other side, which also included the new school. But of course, with everything like that comes a cost, and the costings of doing something like that was in excess of $30 million, which is was a lot of money. And where I come back to is one of the reasons why we developed the Cafeteria and the property on the corner and sell off the units, where we would get a commercial building with a commercial income coming in to maintain and be able to further develop the properties that we've got. And like I said earlier, it's not for the sake of having millions and millions of dollars, it's for the sake of having better facilities for our members. Don't forget, the community is based on religion and language, right? And our heritage, our history, food, everything. So we're there to provide those services to our members as such. And that was one way that we thought we could sort of create. We've also got a plan in mind, which we're getting some traction on, is closing off that Besant Street between Browning Street and the Edmondson Street, making it like a platea from one side to the other side. So that hasn't been knocked back either. That's been suggested to council members at the moment. So there's a lot of ideas that have been floating around to make it like a real hub, like a real Greek platea, you know, a Greek centre of the universe, as we would say. And so, you know, the committee works pretty hard. The committees over the last 30 years, it's not the old style, just having a cafeteria in the church and what have you. Today, you just need to have a real good cross-section of people on the community to run the community. You need your lawyers, you need your accountants, you need your engineers and architects, but you need the rank and file person there too that can talk some sense into these people, of the real people, you know. So it's a good cross-section of having 15 people on a committee, right? And it's been so we've been so progressive. It's been good, you know, younger people wanting to get involved. Goya's back fully involved again. We've just restored Goya House to the cost of nearly $1 million, right, to redoing for the youth. So money goes. You need to have funds to be able to develop these. Now, inside, they've done it beautifully, restored it inside. They've got a commercial kitchen in there. They've got a number of things we've got a lift in the front there for service. So it's, you know, it's a modern day structure that we've got there that just showcases what we're trying to do for youth. Because if you look, the other thing with Goodwin Park was the motto of always held, kids on the sporting field are kids off the streets. Okay, they develop such good friends playing in sport and that type of stuff, or in the youth club. It's just their lifelong friendships develop. What we'll be doing to stage one will be with the current afternoon school is we're going to spend several millions of dollars on renovating and developing it into a proper school, which will start off as probably year 1 and 2, as they do, and then gradually as you go to years 3, 4, and at the same time then move ahead with your plans on the vacant block on the flats property, where they're looking at developing up to 7 stories there. So that'll be a stepping stone moving on to being a school from year 1 to year 6. Okay, so that is envisaged to be in 2024, or maybe at the end of 23, that would be ready to move along with. So that's basically stage one now, and there's also talk of expanding childcare. Now we've also got to find areas for the welfare. The respite might have to move in the process from where we're operating, might go to Goodman Park, right? Which is a big hall that could be utilised. We're not quite sure, it's not set in stone as such, but those are the plans that we've looked at all the different options. You know, the old story, you've got to crawl before you walk, you've got to walk before you run. And we're in the crawling stage to walking for the school, right? And I think within 3-5 years it will be in the walk to running stage to get the other side of it done. Look, I've been fortunate in the years, over the years, been fortunate. Look, this is not something that we get paid to do as a committee. It's something that we love doing. We've got that passion to help people. That's one of the things that my parents always instilled. You know, where you can help other people, to help other people, and that type of stuff. And you know, when you've got that passion for Hellenism and the Greek, from the church onwards, it's something that draws you there, that's hard to get away from. And but I've been fortunate over the years that without the community, and if it wasn't for the community, I wouldn't be getting any of these awards. But I did get a multicultural award from the then Premier Anna Bligh for services to multiculturalism back then. I was fortunate to get a life membership of Goya and the life membership of the Greek Orthodox Community of St George. I was also fortunate to get the St George Medal, which is one of the highest honours in the community there. Also fortunate to get a Panegyri medal, which I knew nothing about, totally knew nothing about. And out of left field, and I can swear on a stack of Bibles, I got an OAM and I had no idea whatsoever that I was even nominated. My wife knew, I knew nothing about it, I nearly fell off the chair, had no idea whatsoever. And that's sort of something that, you know, whilst I'm proud of, but it's just something that I don't go bragging too much about, right? It's just me. It's just not want to be bragging about all these things. I do want to finish off with one little thing with when we were at Olympic and Amiga House, right? When we were fundraising and they'd be playing cards on a Friday night and we had rosters. And I'd been to the club and went to so they were playing Manila, fundraising for Olympic, right? Anyway, old like Freddie was there. Chris, how you going? Where you been? I hadn't seen you for ages. He was sit down, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, lo and behold, within half an hour, they got police come up the front steps, coppers come up the back stairs. We got Channel 9, bloody, all of a sudden, don't move, rah, 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 we're all bloody on the, I thought, oh shit, bloody, you know, if the Belum were here now, you know. Anyway, at the bar, there was all these old Greeks, which I won't mention some of the names, they were drinking there, and then the Greek, the girl from Channel 9 was starting to video them at the bar and that. And one of the old Greek, used to be a photographer, threw a glass at her, right? And it missed her by a mile, ricocheted off the wall, then came back and hit her on the head, right? Anyway, all of a sudden the commotion hit the, you know, everything went, police. And anyway, he then got a heart problem and started to sort of collapse to the floor, laying on the floor, all the Greeks around him, giving him air, blah, blah, blah. Got to get him fresh air. They all grab a leg, carry him down the stairs of the Amiga house. Next thing I think, they all bolted. There was nothing wrong with him. That's how sharp all these old Greeks were. They bolted up the streets, never to be seen again. Anyway, I had to tell you that one.